Hi, my name is Tina Algaard Benson. I'm an associate professor at Roskilde University in Denmark. And in this video, you can get a short introduction to one of my articles. It's called The Tripod of Trust and is about a multi-level approach to trust-based leadership in public organizations. And it has been published in the Public Management Review. So in this article, I pose a research question: what does trust-based leadership entail when you explore it from a multi-level approach, where you focus on both institutional and interactional elements of trust at both the individual, the team, and the organizational level? And I define trust-based leadership as a leadership that is aimed at building and facilitating trust as an organizational resource. And you do that to enable the distribution of autonomy and decision-making, which in turn allows for increased task complexity and innovation. So why is this an important question? Well, when you look at the literature on leadership and specifically trust-based leadership, there is a tendency to focus mostly on the relationship between leaders and the individual employee. The focus on how leaders facilitate trust within teams and also between units like teams or departments across the organization has received much less attention in the research. There's also a tendency to focus very much on interactional trust. And by interactional trust, I mean trust that is built through micro processes between individuals in the organization. So here we're talking more about a relational perspective on trust. While on the other hand, institutional elements of trust, like how do regulatory tools, systems of control, rules, procedures, the way you supervise institutions, how does that affect and condition trust building within the organization? So there has been very little research done on that, and research focusing on more than one level and more than one type of trust is extremely rare. So in this article, in this study, I am following a case of trust-based leadership in an organization in Denmark. It's a Job and Competence Center in Gentofte Municipality. And as you can see here on the picture, they are celebrating. And they're doing that because they have been winning quite a few prizes for being a very well-driven organization. Not only have they won Great Place to Work in Denmark and also in Europe several times, but we can also see that they perform really well when we talk about their efficiency and looking into the supervision reports. They are a very well-driven organization. In this place, they actively aim to boost trust and to lead trust-based, and that is why I've selected them as a case. The case study builds on interviews, on observations, and also on documents. So the results. When I look into this case, I can see that they actually, as leaders, promote trust in several ways and at several levels. So they both employ more interactional elements like competence development, the way they support employees more informally and coach rather than advise them. But there are also more institutional elements, the way they use rules or lack of rules to provide more autonomy can be spotted at all levels. They also involve employees very radically in designs of control solutions. But there are also examples of leaders using formal rules quite rigidly to make sure that it's the right employees who are working at this organization. So when employees are not able or willing to navigate these very high levels of autonomy, leaders use rules and contracts to warn and ultimately fire employees if they are not capable or willing. So what can we learn from this case? Well, first and foremost, there is a complementary interplay going on. Leaders do combine and engage both institutional elements of trust and interactional elements of trust. at all the levels. And it's also quite clear that, for example, when leaders use formal rules at one level to make sure that they have the right team, that allows them to use some very high levels of delegation at other levels in the organization. So, what are the implications of this? Well, first and foremost, when you combine all these levels and these aspects of institutional interactional trust, a metaphor for trust-based multi-level leadership occurs, and that is what I call the tripod of trust. It can function as a metaphor and a reminder for leaders that there are various levels they need to address. There are various remedies they can use both at the institutional and at the interactional level. So contributions to both practice and research. Well, I think when we talk research, a contribution is certainly to make this multi-level approach and also to integrate various forms of trust. There is also perhaps a lack or a gap that could be addressed in further research when we look at citizens and users trust. That is not part of the tripod of trust, but could potentially be something that could be developed. I also think time as a factor is something that we need to address, that having built this kind of multi-level trust-based leadership in this specific case has evolved over time, and that could also be an aspect for further research. When you look into practice, I think the complementary understanding of trust of control, institutional and interactional trust is quite important. And also making leaders think more about trust-based leadership as something that is not just something going on between them and the single employee, but is also something that they need to address and support both at the team and at the organizational level. I also think when we look at leadership training and organizational development, there is a tendency to focus much on the interactional dimension and at the individual level between leaders and their employees. So using the tripod of trust can also be a reminder that perhaps we need to address other levels and other elements of trust in the way we progress development in the organization. So if you're curious, if you want to read more, you can find the article in Public Management Review. And I would like to thank you for listening and hope that you found some inspiration here.